Today we're making keto sweet and salty roasted pecans. Doesn't that sound yummy? So come on into my kitchen and cook with me. Hi everyone, my name is Christine Deshanka, and if you're new here, you don't know this yet, but I'm on a journey to lose 150 pounds through a ketogenic lifestyle and spiritual growth. So today we're doing video recipe number 2 in my pecan series. Now in recipe number 1, which I'll link in the eye up above, we made butter roasted spiced pecans and they were scrumdiddlyocious. Is that a word? I think it is. And today we are making keto sweet and salty roasted pecans. Now these ones are very different from the first recipe. They are a sweet treat. They are crunchy, salty, and they're candy coated. Now there's lots of roasted pecan sweet recipes out there, but these ones are more of a coated pecan. So they're just as versatile as the butter roasted spiced pecans, but they're more on the sweet side. There is the option to add cinnamon to give it a little spice. I always add cinnamon to this recipe. If you prefer to leave it out, that's up to you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Click that notification bell to all so you never miss a video upload. Comment below, give me a thumbs up, and follow me on Instagram. Link to my Instagram is below. Okay, so let's get started with our sweet and salty keto roasted pecans. Yeah! Let's go. Let's get into the ingredients. We're going to need 1 egg white. I haven't separated this yet. I'll do that on camera. We're going to need some liquid stevia, some vanilla, cinnamon, which is the optional part, but trust me, put it in. It's great and very delicious. Some pink Himalayan sea salt that I've freshly ground, some butter. You can use salted or unsalted, it doesn't really matter. Of course, we need our measuring cups, bowls. You will need a pot large enough to hold up to 3 cups of nuts, a spatula, baking pan. I'm opting to use some parchment paper because these do get quite sticky and that'll help with cleanup. You will also need a mixing bowl and a whisk to beat our egg white slightly and to coat our pecans for the first go. Sweeteners, other than the stevia, I am using 2 sweeteners today, but you can use just one. I'm going to be using Lakanto monk fruit erythritol blend. I get it at Costco, so I put it in a separate container once I get it home. It's just easier for storage. And we're also going to be using some Swerve Brown because I like the flavor. It adds a nice caramel note to these, and that's what I'm looking for. You could use all brown, whichever brown sugar substitute you like, or you could use all erythritol. It's really up to you. If you like to use powdered stevia, you're going to have to adjust the amounts because powdered stevia is a lot more intensely sweet than erythritols and monk fruit erythritol blends, but use whatever sweetener you like. And then of course the star of the show is the pecans. Whether you say pecan or pecan,
but I would be proud.
But I would be proud
To partake.
to partake
Of your pecan pie.
of your pecan pie.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie.
these are amazing. They're my favorite nut. And they're readily available. They're great for keto because they're a high-fat, very nutritious nut, and they're extremely versatile. I do buy them from Costco. They are raw, unsalted, which is what you're looking for. Do not buy pre-roasted or salted pecans for this recipe because you're going to end up with an overly salty end product, and you will also end up with nuts that have inflammatory oils in them. As I mentioned in the previous pecan video, if you buy pre-roasted pecans, they have inflammatory oils that are used to roast them. So we want to stay away from that on keto. Alright, so I have all my ingredients here. I'm going to move a couple of things. I'm going to crack my egg and separate my yolk out. And we're going to get started. Well, my shell didn't crack very nicely, but I'm going to work with it. Because I have to. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and hope it doesn't break. Gloopy, gloopy. So I'm just going to take that and dump it into my larger whisking bowl. And I'm going to save my yolk for another recipe. Okay, so there's our egg white. Now to this I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to add a couple of drops of stevia, liquid stevia. This is just to add some sweetness to the first layer and the first 10 minutes of the roasting of the pecans. So we're just going to add a couple of drops, just like so. And we're also going to need 1 tablespoon of tap water. In it goes. And now we're going to whisk this together. We don't want to make a meringue or anything like that. We get it a little bit bubbly. Just want a little bit of a froth. We add the tablespoon of water to this because it helps to kind of break down the egg white and help it froth a lot quicker. And there we go. Now we can set this aside. And we're going to get our pecans. I don't have enough in this package for the whole recipe, so I will have to open up the second bag, but we're going to be using 3 cups. We will be dumping them directly into our frothed egg white. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but all of the recipe amounts will be in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. So we need 3 cups of pecans. One. 2. 3. Oh, look at that one. Oh, it's got its skin ripped off.
Fortunately, I keep my feathers numbered for just such an emergency.
I did forget to mention that I've preheated my oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius or centigrade. So I have my 3 cups of pecans here in the bowl, and I'm going to stir to coat them thoroughly with the egg white mixture. Now this might seem a little strange, and it is, but this is going to give us kind of like a skin, I guess you could say, and a pre-seasoning. That's why we added the stevia drops into the pecans, and it will help with the sticky sweet part to adhere to the pecans nicely. When I was developing this recipe, I did try this as a dry rub with the other ingredients. I didn't include butter, and I found that most of the sugar and the salt and the cinnamon just kind of fell off once they came out of the oven, so That's why we're adding the butter, and that's why we're also adding the egg white, because it helps everything kind of stick to the pecans in this sweet recipe. So now we're going to add our egg white coated pecans to a parchment lined sheet. This is a half sheet pan. My pan is non-stick, but I prefer to put the parchment down anyway because it just helps with cleanup. Just put it on there. You know what I'm gonna say here. It don't have to be fancy, people. It don't have to be fancy.
Bring back my girls.
Just get it on the pan. And then we are going to spread out our egg white coated pecans. Spread them out evenly so that they're nice and flat. By the way, that was a medium egg that I used for the egg white. That doesn't really matter. If you use a large one, that's fine. Just don't use a small, because that wouldn't give you enough, unless you're only going to be making a smaller amount of pecans. But a medium or a large egg white is preferred. Okay, that looks good to me. There we go. Okay, so I've preheated my oven, as I said, to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius. I've set my timer to 10 minutes. So we're going to get these in the oven and let them pre-roast for 10 minutes. They will be kind of making a crackly sound. Crackle, crackle. Mmm, delicious.
If that isn't like Mom's apple pie, you're right.
Into the oven they go. "10 minutes. See you soon." Okay, so we're back. While our pecans are roasting in the oven, there's about 5 minutes left on the timer. I am going to get our sweet, sticky mixture going. Okay, so you're going to need a pot that's large enough to hold up to 3 cups of the pecans, because we're going to mix them in this once we take them out of the oven from the egg white. So we're going to put our butter in the pan. Remember, the amounts are below. My optional cinnamon, which I do suggest you do use, and my pink Himalayan sea salt. You can use regular sea salt if you like. I just prefer pink Himalayan. That's what I buy. I use it basically in all my food. And then to that, we are going to add the vanilla that I forgot to add. So that is going to get in there. Whoop. And now for the sugars, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of times I think, I'm going to be using 2 types of sugars, sugar replacements or natural sweeteners. I'm going to be using Swerve Brown because I like the caramel taste and texture that it gives to these pecans, as well as the Lakanto Monk Fruit Erythritol Blend. This is the classic. I don't have much of the golden left, so I'm using the classic today. I picked this up at Costco. I put it in my own container for storage and easy measuring. I find that Swerve is a little more expensive. That's why I'm not going with full amount of Swerve. But I'm going half and half here with my sugars. Since that's sticky, I'm going to do my monk fruit first. Like I said, use whichever keto approved or low carb approved natural sweetener that you prefer. But the measurements in the recipe are for erythritol types or granular types of sweeteners. not containing stevia. Okay, so there's that half. Okay, so it's all in there. I'm just going to put it onto the stove on medium-low to melt everything together. And keep your eye on it. You do not want your natural sweeteners to burn. You just want everything to melt together, come together in a pot of deliciousness, and not be gritty or grainy anymore. You want the sugars to melt completely. Okay. So we're just going to let that melt. It's already starting to melt. Okay. Give that a few minutes to do its thing. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yum. Okay, so as you can see, our butter, salt, cinnamon, and natural sugar mixtures has kind of come to a little bit of a boil, I guess you could say. I'm not feeling any grit from the sweeteners in there, so we're good to go. We can now remove this from the heat. Oh, and our 10 minutes is up on our egg white covered. Okay, so we have our first round of roasting done. Now this is just with the egg white mixture. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dump all of these into our sugar butter mix. Here's our sugar and butter and cinnamon mix. You can see it's nice and smooth and liquidy. It smells absolutely amazing. Just going to break them up a little. Be careful that you don't burn yourself. They'll break up more when we're stirring them into the sugar mix, but I just want to do this to make it a little easier to pour into the pot. Okay, so we're just going to pour these into the pot in a very noisy fashion. Get the stragglers. Okay, so now we're going to stir these around and get them thoroughly coated with the sweet butter mixture. Make sure that every pecan is evenly coated. I use a silicone spatula just because it's easier to do this that way, and it gets into all the crevices in the nether regions of the pot. Make sure that everybody's getting every little piece of the pie. Just want to do this for a minute just to make sure that nobody's naked. We don't want naked pecans, we want coated pecans. You do have to do this quickly though, because as the sugar and butter mixture cools, it will start to harden up. I learned that the hard way one time. Okay, I think we're good. We are thoroughly coated. Bring my pan back. Ooh, that's toasty. We're going to pour them out onto our lined pan. Make sure to get every little bit of that sweet brown sugar and butter. Sweet brown sugar and butter. And we're going to spread them just like we did before, nice and flat and even. Now they're getting a little bit cool, even though the baking pan or the cookie sheet is still warm from the oven. They are getting a little bit cool, so we want to just try our best to get them to lay flat. If some of them are stuck on top of another one, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll all work out in the end. Just try your best because we want them to roast as evenly as possible. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so I'm going to put my oven mitts back on, and we're going to stick these babies back into the oven for their second roast. We're keeping it at 300 Fahrenheit or 150 Celsius, and we're doing it for another 10 minutes. So our pecans are in the oven for roast session number 2 with the brown sugar. I did forget to mention that you want to keep your oven rack in the middle of the oven for this. Just like with the butter roasted spiced pecan recipe, because pecans are a high fat content pecan, we don't want them to burn, so make sure that your oven rack or shelf in the oven is in the middle so that they don't burn. Okay, round 2 of our roast is done. I'm going to take them out, stir them up, and see what we've got. Ooh, look at those. Listen to the sizzle. You hear that?
Here comes the smolder.
In case you haven't all noticed, I really love food. I'm gonna give these a little stir. Just a light stir. I'm not going to be as aggressive with these ones as we were in the other pecan video, the butter roasted spiced ones. Not that these ones can't handle a little bit of aggression, but we wanna give some loving to these pecans because these are sweet pecans, so we gotta treat them sweet. So nice little stir. We're gonna flatten them out again. Now you see they've come apart from each other. There's a couple that are still kind of crowded, but I had some crumbs because I got to the bottom of the bag in with my pecans, so there's a little bit of broken pieces and crumbs and so on, but that's alright, it doesn't really matter. It's all good. Now, this is optional. I'm going to add a little bit more freshly ground pink Himalayan salt. You don't need to do this. If you want to keep them more on the sweet side, just leave it at this, but I want to have that nice contrast of the sweet and salty. So I'm just going to grind a little right on top. One more for good measure. There we go. And now I'm going to put them in. This is where you're going to have to keep your eye on it. We do have the timer set for 10 minutes, but it probably won't need that long. Probably 5 will be enough. So set your timer for 10, but check them at 5. Remember, we do not want these beauties to burn. Okay, back in they go. We're at about the 8-minute mark. You kind of know when they're done because they'll be sizzling a little bit less, which means that the moisture from the pecans has subsided, and the water has evaporated from the butter and the egg white mixture, and they're nice and roasted. So we're gonna have to let these sit. Don't touch them at this point. Don't stir them up or anything like that. We want them to cool and harden up because of our candy coating. Candy in quotation air marks, in air quotation marks. we want it to harden up and give us that nice crunchy candy coating on our pecans. So we're just gonna let these sit. You can let them sit anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour before you taste them. The longer the better. At room temperature, do not put them in the fridge because then they will absorb moisture from your fridge. Okay, so we're back. Our keto sweet and salty roasted pecans are completely cooled. They are stuck because they're candied. So we're going to break them apart just by lifting the parchment and kind of moving them around. This is also another reason why it's a good idea to put parchment on your pan. If you wanted to leave them in clusters like this, you could. Or like this even. You could leave them like that. I prefer to keep them a little more individualized. Okay, so they're all loose from the paper now, so I'm just gonna break them. Some of them like this, I don't mind keeping it like that. Like I said, this is up to you if you want to do this. Don't have to do it for every single one, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. It's pretty simple. Okay, so now that our pecans are all separated from each other for the most part, it's time for the taste test. Ooh. Shall I eat them all? Well, eventually I will, but let's see. Ooh, this one looks extra delicious and it has a little nub on the side. Mmm. One more just for good measure. Delicious. Licking my fingers again. Okay, so now these get stored basically the same way as our butter roasted spiced pecans in an airtight container, whether you want that to be a mason jar or Tupperware, whatever you prefer. I like just a cheap old dollar store Ziploc bag. Squeeze the air out. Keep them at room temperature. Do not store in the fridge. I've said this a million times probably by now. Do not store them in the fridge because they will get soggy. There's moisture in the fridge. We do not want that in our pecans. We worked really hard to get them nice and crispy. They last about the same amount of time as the butter roasted spiced pecans. Up to 3 weeks. You're fine. But they probably won't last that long because they're so delicious. Just make sure that each time that you take some out for yourself to make sure there's less air in the container if you're using a bag. These taste great right now, you know, freshly roasted, but they actually get better with age. So I find this is the case with most keto sweets. The erythritol in the sweetener tends to kind of mellow out and mesh better with the other ingredients about 2 or 3 days after baking or roasting. So you'll find that like a fine wine, these get a lot better with age. So 2-3 days down the road, they're going to be even more delicious. You're going to taste the cinnamon a little bit more. The cooling effect from the erythritol will begin to subside, and you're going to be wanting to make these. As soon as you run out, you're going to want to make another batch. Now, what can you do with these? Well, just like with our butter roasted spice pecans, you can of course just eat them as is, like I just did. Add them to a charcuterie board for the little bit of sweetness. Or make a trail mix with them, some sugar-free chocolate chips or chunks, some other nuts. Maybe you want some raw almonds mixed in there, or some walnuts, some hazelnuts or macadamia nuts. Whatever you like. You can even throw in some of the the butter roasted spiced pecans into the trail mix and make it a sweet and savory and so on type of thing. Or you can add them to other recipes. Now this is key, and I want to hear from you what you'd like to see me add these to, because I love dessert. Even on keto, you still have dessert. Case in point, sweet pecans. But these are really great added to other recipes. So pecan blondies, why use plain old raw pecans in a pecan blondie when you can add some sweet and salty roasted pecans? Bonus! What about a plain old mud cake? Just before you put it in the microwave, sprinkle a few of these on top, you're golden. How about chocolate covered pecan clusters? Sounds pretty nice, don't it? So let me know what you'd like to see as the next recipe for our pecan series. Leave your comment. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. Switch it to all. Give this video a thumbs up. Share this video. And follow me on Instagram, which is linked below. Let me know if you try these and what you think of them. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget to give yourself license to keto. Bye for now. Mwah! Sweetness and salty. I'm singing to my pecans, 'cause I do things like that.